All right, so this is solving, find the roots. So here's the options. You can do it by factoring. You can do it by the quadratic formula. You can do it by completing the square. You can do it by square rooting, whatever you want. Yes, you can do all of them technically by the quadratic formula. I'm telling you right now, I corrected those quizzes. And the people that did it by the quadratic formula couldn't get the right answers because they made so many mistakes. So here's what I suggest you do. I suggest if you're feeling worried, first of all, delete everything. And then I would go Control G and I would literally plug in negative 3x squared. And some of you were really smart about that on the quiz. Okay? And then I look and it crosses at 0 and 3. So I know the answer to letter A is x equals 0 and x equals 3. Now I've got to figure out what I can do to get 0 and 3. Okay? So I'll give you a point for that. If that's all you do, you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Granted, they're each worth 3 points, but 6 points out of 18 is better than nothing. So I notice they all divide by negative 3 because I don't like negatives. I can divide it in this case because I'm solving. But in this case, when I had it in factored form, I had to keep the 2 because I'm still having it factored. Okay, so then I get x squared minus 3x. I notice they both have an x. So I'm going to take out an x. I'll be left with x minus 3. And then if I set that equal to 0, I get 0. If I set that equal to 0, I get 3. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next one. And if I don't know what to do, I'm going to go Menu, Actions, Delete All. Am I sure? Of course I'm sure. Then I'm going to go Control G and I'm going to plug in that formula, 5x squared minus 125. And I see it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5. So I want to get my point. X equals 5, x equals negative 5. Yes, it takes time. And honestly, if you know what to do, it's just better to do the problem. But if you're not sure what to do, at least get an answer in there. So I see they all divide by 5. X squared minus 25 equals 0. Now let me point out, the way I did it doesn't have to be the way you do it. In this problem, you could have done the quadratic formula, where a is negative 3, b is 9, and c is 0. But I think this is easiest for me. In this problem, you could have added 125 first, and then divided by 5. I decided to divide by 5 first. This one, I could add 25 and square root, or I would rather, because I know how to factor, do it this way. X minus 5, set it equal to 0, done. Set it equal to 0, done. Okay? The next one, it's a cubed this time. Oh my gosh, that's a little bit different. That means I'm going to have 3 answers. So what do? Oops. Menu, Actions, Delete All. And since it's 3 answers, it might be more intimidating. What am I going to do? Plug it in. 4x to the 3rd power minus 24x squared. And if you think, oh, well, I'm not very good at using the calculator, come in at lunch and use the calculator. Okay? All right, I see that it crosses, oh, sorry about that. It crosses at 1, 2, 3, and 0. And if I'm not sure, I can go Menu, Trace, Graph Trace. Oh, there it is. It crosses at 0 and all that other stuff, okay? So I notice they all divide by 4. And then I get x cubed minus 6x squared plus 9x. Now the mistake that people make is they divide by x, but the whole thing is you're trying to find x. So you've got to take the x out. And there's my x equals 0. And then, and by the way, I cannot do the quadratic formula until it looks like this, because the quadratic formula is squared, because quadratics are squared. I can factor this, or I can quadratic formula it, or I can complete the square. Either way, my other answer is 3. Next one. Now, the problem with this one, if I'm going to put it in the calculator, I'm going to have to set it equal to 0. And once I do that, that 4 right there, then I could take that and plug it into the calculator. Okay? So when I do that, I'll do that, because why not? Okay, let me go back to my standard space. So Menu, Windows, Zoom, Standard, and then Control G, and I go x squared plus 10 x plus 24. Oops, I forgot to put the x. I'm not sure what's, oh, that's multiplying thing is in there. Okay, that's third time's the charm. Now when I go menu trace, graph trace, I go down because I have to press the left and the right. It's going to take a second, sorry, because it was up 24. There's my 0 at -4, 0. And I see it at -6, 0. Since they're whole numbers, I knew I could factor. This is what I'm telling you. If you can't factor, it's going to mess you up. Two numbers that multiply to get 24 and add to get 10. Oops. So I get x equals -6, x equals -4. Okay, the next one. I could do the quadratic formula, but I'd have to multiply this out, and it's definitely a pain. So hopefully you just recognize that it's easier to do this type. Divide by 3. X minus 5 squared equals 24. Square root, x minus 5 equals plus or minus. You can't leave it 24, so I have to tree it. If you don't tree it and you leave it 24, you will lose a point. Okay? There's my double. That's what's left. Then add 5. X equals 5 plus or minus 2 rad 6. There's no bonus for giving me the decimal. Give me that. It's fine. Okay. Let's go to this one. I'll try to factor, and I know I can't, so I have to do the quadratic formula. I cannot complete the square because there's a 4 in front. If I divide everything by 4, I'm going to get a fraction, and that's crazy. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. If you remember, I said take care of this part first. 3 squared is 9. A negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 4 is 16 times 1 is 16. Oh, then maybe I could have factored this one. 9 plus 16 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. 3 plus or minus 5 over 8, which is 3 plus 5 over 8, and 3 minus 5 over 8. So I get 8 over 8, which is 1. And 3 minus 5 is -2 over 8. Don't give me -2 over 8. Give me -1/4. So I guess I could have factored that one, but sometimes it's just easier to do the quadratic formula. Okay, name 3 quadratic functions that have a range behavior of negative infinity, and then 3 that have positive infinity. Well, negative infinity means it's going down. Positive infinity means it's going up. So that just means I need to think of an equation that has a negative. -3 x minus 4 squared plus 7. Y equals -3x squared minus 7x plus 2. If you look here, both in this case, that's negative. What's in front? Negative. This one, y equals 3x minus 4 squared plus 7. Y equals 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. In both these cases, that's positive, okay? But let me go back to this one right here. See how that's cubed? Well, then that wouldn't even be a quadratic function. So if you go, oh, well, this has positive end behavior because that number is positive, but it's quadratic. Quadratic means squared, that's cubic. So that one would not count. Be careful. All right, this one, it opens up the axis of symmetry. That's when I'm going to go -b over 2a. So I'm going to go -6 over 2 times 3, which is 6 over 6, which is 1. So I get x equals 1. I know this is going up, so it's a minimum. Okay. To find the y value, I'm going to take the 1 and I'm going to plug it in. I can't divide by 3 because I'm ignoring the vertical stretch, and I cannot ignore the vertical stretch. I like that it's 1, because 1 squared times 1 is 1, times 3 is 3. Do you have to show your work? Yes, because, ladies and gentlemen, I could copy it off the calculator, and why don't I do that right now? Make sure I'm good. So menu actions, delete all. Am I sure? Of course. Control G, 3x squared minus 6x plus 6. And some of you are really good about doing this. Ooh, look at this. It's not crossing the x-axis. That means my x-intercepts will be imaginary. And I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My y-intercept is 0, 6. I see my vertex is 1, 3. Okay, perfect. I did that right. Okay. I know my domain is all real numbers. Negative infinity to positive infinity. And I did show my work. That kind of looks like a -3, so let me write that out. So I'm going to find the x-intercepts. To find the x-intercepts, I set this equal to 0. So I'm going to go 0 equals 3x squared minus 6x plus 6. Since I'm solving, I can now divide by 3 here. X squared minus 2x plus 2 equals 0. I can either do the quadratic formula or complete the square. I'll complete the square. So I'm going to switch sides and move the 2. So x squared minus 2x, it would be minus 2. I should leave space. And now I'm going to complete my box. X squared, half of that, negative 1x, negative 1x, x, negative 1, negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So plus 1, plus 1. Now remember the outside of my box goes here, x minus 1 squared. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. When I square root, there's my imaginary that my calculator showed me. X minus 1 equals I plus or minus. The square root of 1 is 1. So 1 plus or minus 1I, then add 1, add 1. So then I get x equals 1 plus or minus I. But when I'm doing my x-intercepts, 1 plus I, comma 0, 1 minus I, comma 0. Okay? The range y, it's going up, is greater than or equal to y value of the vertex. Remember who has the power? The y value of the vertex. Okay? So that means smallest, and the smallest is 3. To positive infinity, parentheses. The intervals. If it's easier for you to graph it now, that's great, but I know it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, and I know that it's all focused on the x value of my vertex, 1, 1. Decreasing, increasing. End behavior as x approaches negative infinity, f of x approaches. As x approaches positive infinity, f of x approaches. Since it is going up, positive infinity, positive infinity. Okay, now I'm going to graph it. If I graph it, I have to put my crucial points. So 1, I know there's lines, but I'm just making my own. So 1, 3, and then 0, 6, 4, 5, 6. Since that is not enough points to graph it perfectly, I have to make sure that I don't put a fake point there, and now I graph it, make it look like a U, and draw in the axis of symmetry. Okay? Identify the number of solutions. So I don't actually want the answers, I just want to know how many you're going to get. So one real solution would be something like this, where it crosses the x-axis twice. 2 real solutions is something like this, which means it crosses 2 times. 2 complex solutions means you have an imaginary answer, and this isn't even possible. Okay? So when I do my quadratic formula, it's what's inside that square root that tells me how many answers I'm going to get. So I'm going to go 7 squared minus 4 times 5 times 1. 49 minus 20 is square root of 20. If my answer is positive, it's what in here is positive, it'll be 2 real solutions. If what in here was negative, then it would be, there aren't any answers because it would be imaginary. And if what in here was 0, the square root of nothing is nothing. So when you add nothing or subtract nothing, you only end up with 1 answer. So since it was positive, my answer is 2 real solutions. Okay? I'm not asking you to find the answer. I'm just asking how many there are. Okay?